today I'm going to speak from the perspective of a surgeon scientist, a basic scientist, but a researcher foremost, and just pretty much with the same qualities that were highlighted in the previous two talks. But you guys know that I'm at the McMaster Stem Cell and Cancer Research Institute. And part of the pleasure of being in this institute is that it's myself working with a group of 6 other basic scientists. We all specialize in various aspects of human stem cell research. And the nice thing about belonging to an institute is that an institute has a philosophical overview and a theme and a mandate. And our mandate is that we're always studying human stem cell populations, and so we think that brings us one step closer to translation. The fact that although it's much incrementally more difficult to work with human stem cells rather than in animal models or animal systems, we believe it brings us one step closer to translation. And the second theme of the Institute is that we all are looking for solutions that we're trying to find from these very powerful multipotent cells, solutions that can apply to regenerative medicine or solutions that can apply to cancer. And so thematically we're linked. We're from, again, very diverse backgrounds, but the driving philosophy of what we do is the same. So a lot of times we put ourselves into little boxes or silos, and we think, well, why would I want to sit next to a health policy person at this conference? I'm a stem cell scientist. I should sit at a table with other stem cell scientists. I should really just study what's relevant to me. You would be shocked how often you're going to learn so much more from the person who is so far out of your field and so far out of your box. So you should sit at a table at a conference with a bunch of people from completely different research fields, because frankly, all of the good ideas in research come from outside of your own box. So, and another thing I've learned through my own research program that I'll touch on today is that sometimes it's good to be out of your comfort zone. It's excellent to spend 17 years building an expertise in one small area and becoming as expert as possible. And in fact, that is a key to success. But then once you get to that pinnacle, I think the great thing to do is to put yourself out of your comfort zone. And we have to sort of keep reinventing ourselves, as Dr. Bhandari alluded to in his talk. So why should we do this? We've just heard some inspirational talks, but embedded in the inspiration was some signs of, well, masochism, really. So you've heard about the failures. You've heard about the fact that, you know, there's a lot of pitfalls and roadblocks and so on. So why do we do this? You know, if you think about it, a lot of science really is masochism. It's just facing horrible reviews and terrible critiques and people telling you what your worth is every day. And really, if we didn't have some sort of ego, we'd all be curled up in the fetal position in the corner of our offices crying. So why do we do this? And again, I'm putting up some quotes now from some people who probably are in my circle of 5 or at some point have been. So this is the difficulty. When you have a foot in both worlds, how can you be as good at something that someone else is spending 100% of their time doing? And this applies to both the surgical side, where neurosurgeons will sort of look at you and go, well, how many procedures do you do a year? I do 700, you know. How can you be as good as the guy who does 700 a year? And the scientists at the same point will just take one look at you and think, so you're doing stem cell science 30% of the time, and I'm doing it 100% of the time. How do you think you're going to get ahead of me? So there's a lot of this sort of attitude that you sort of look at, and then you have to look at yourself and think, well, how am I going to be as good as or better than those people? This is what Dr. Hollenberg used to say to people at cocktail parties, because this is something I'm going to stress. When you start your career as a clinician scientist, what happens, no matter how intelligent and bright your leadership is, the kind of stock answer you're going to get when you say to your director of whatever program, so how much time am I going to spend doing research and how much time will I spend doing clinical? This is invariably the answer you'll get. Well, I guess you'll kind of be 50-50, right? So what is 50-50? We'll talk about that a little bit. There actually is no 50-50, and how you define and protect your time is more of a structure issue of how you build your infrastructure around you rather than an actual direct division of how much time do I spend every week doing research. So this is what Dr. Hollenberg used to tell people. I think it was true more or less for my first 4 years of practice. And this is a good question too. So we're all in difficult fields already, right? We're all in difficult fields already, so why do we always pick the hard way? Ask Dr. Sabri, because you know, here's a man who spends 100% of his time seeing patients and then does research on top of that. Why are we all doing things the hard way? There's got to be a reason, right? So I think these are the reasons. I mean, the reasons are that once you climb to this unique perspective and you build yourself up from nothing, right? Because we all start at the bottom. We all start in the first year of medical school and build ourselves up. And in building ourselves, we're acquiring as much knowledge as possible. We're moving up, and we're moving up by refining our ideas and acquiring more knowledge along the way. And at the end of all of that, the fascinating thing is that if you've invested in studying science and you've invested in studying surgery, and then you have the unique privilege of practicing in both worlds, you have a unique perspective that all of the basic scientists who are studying basic science 100% of the time and all of the surgeons who are doing surgery 100% of the time, they don't have that perspective. They don't have that iterative feedback between the two worlds. And when I'm on the lab side, I'll make an observation of something that cells are doing in a dish, and 2 weeks later I'll be seeing a patient, and suddenly an idea will come into my head that will remind me of that experiment. And something sometimes when I'm seeing a patient in clinic, and I'm looking at the natural history of disease unfolding in that patient, something will suddenly spark an idea of something I need to do in the lab. So there's an iterative feedback between the two worlds that we're privileged to circulate in, that provides you with the unique perspective. That is your gold. That is your distinction. That's what's going to set you apart from everybody else. And so really, just sort of very similar to what Dr. Bandari said about what's your question and what's your why. That's a driving force for us. We need to find a why that comes from that unique perspective that nobody else has. So the other wonderful and lucky thing about our whys is usually, because we're circulating between a world of science and patients, usually our ideas are poised to more directly impact patients. And when you're at McMaster University, world of clinical trials, the home of evidence-based medicine and clinical epidemiology, you're even closer to translating discoveries into patients. So I think that all the surgeon scientist trainees in the room, and I see Raman smiling right now and Iqbal's nodding and looking at me and going, oh boy, broken record, here we go. I'm sorry to you guys because I know you've heard this so many times, but I want to share this with everybody in the room because I'm realizing that this is a very important strategy that can actually have a good impact for everybody here. And it again touches very much on what Dr. Bandari mentioned in his talk. So I tell everybody when they first come and meet me and say, Dr. Singh, I think I want to do research. And a lot of times people have already a very formulated idea of what they want to do. They already know their research question, they know their supervisor, they know, but sometimes they come to me with an inkling, you know, like, I think I want to do research. And those people in particular I find the most exciting because those people, they're sort of limitless. They have, they're in the world of stem cells, they're multipotent. They can go any direction, right? And so I look at those people and I find them particularly exciting. And what I say to everyone, even the ones with the very formalized ideas already, is you need to write it down. And your statement of research interest, it is your why. What you need to do is be able to distill your why into one page. You need to be able to say, what are my past experiences that have shaped my mind to think that I want to pursue research as a career? What is my present? What is my current status? And what am I doing right now? What's my research question? Who could be my potential research supervisor? Who could sit on my thesis committee as guides along the way who can provide me with tools and methodologies to achieve the answer to my research question? And where am I going with this? What kind of program could I build in the future? What kind of contribution could I make to another academic center somewhere? What kind of surgeon scientist am I going to be? So this is a one-page summary, and I always tell people start with the 3 paragraphs, past, present, and future. And what you do is that you write that at first, and then you look at it and you think, wow, this is hokey, this looks really silly, because when you start, you don't really have a clear idea, and it's meant to be that way. If you go back and read the first grant you ever wrote, you usually will cringe because you'll look at it and you'll see all the pitfalls and the holes and you go, oh my God, I can't believe I wrote this. I can't believe anybody even funded this, right? So the point is we're all learning and we're all evolving and we all have to start somewhere. So you start. And what you do is as you then engage in your research training, your process, every 6 months you rewrite this statement. And this statement is a document in evolution. And what it does is it defines you and it captures where you are and your sort of inspirations and ideas along the way. And you do this for the entire extent of your residency and your training. And finally, when you're ready to apply for a job, this turns into a career document. This turns into a career plan. And I tell everyone, don't ever go longer than a page. You have to be able to distill your why, your essence of why you're living this way, into one page. And the reason is most people get bored after reading more than one page. So you want to be able to just keep it to one page all the time. So I brought this document to Dr. Oravan in 2007 when I came to McMaster applying for a job. And I remember he was just thrilled with it. He took one look at it, and I remember him looking at it and looking at me and looking at it and looking at me. And by the end of that one interview, you know, just a 20-minute interview, he knew exactly who I was and where I wanted to go at McMaster. And it really enabled an excellent partnership because he was able to look at me and figure out exactly what I needed to succeed. And I think that that document really helped me engage Dr. Oravan and helped me engage him as a mentor and someone who wanted to help me build my career. So I hope you guys will all walk into your offices and hand this out on the front of, as your cover page for your CV when you're applying for jobs. So, since we're there, let's talk a little bit about how you negotiate your employment, because everything that's good that happens in life arises from good organization and good planning and good time management. And so that starts from the very beginning. You have to set yourself up for success. You don't want to run into a hospital and say, okay, I'm a surgeon scientist, go, okay, and just sort of run around and start to, no, you want to set yourself up for success. You want to lay the foundations from the very first day you start your job. And so when you do this, you have to be ambitious, and you have to know that you have a window of time when you're first being employed where people are actually interested in you. You have 3 to 6 months, you know, where people will actually give you what you need and what you want. After that, I don't think they're going to listen to you as much because they're moving on to the next recruit and the next person. So use that window wisely and come prepared. I came to my meeting with a 3-page list of all of the lab equipment that I could possibly need, and I had generated this on my own, thinking over time, what will I need to set up my own lab? And it had everything on it. You know, I need micropipetters, I need this type of centrifuge, I need, you know, this and that. And so what I did before I came is I visited the Stem Cell and Cancer Research Institute, saw what they had already, made a note of things that I would be allowed to share, and then found the deficits of the things that they didn't have that I really would need to push to ask for. And I approached with a list of resources both on the basic science side and on the clinical side of things that I thought I would need to ensure my success in building a practice on both sides. And that actually, well, it didn't go over that well because you come in with a huge list of expensive equipment that you need and people sort of look at you and think, what? But you really have to do this, and you do have to ask for the sun, moon, and stars up front. And that list has to have extra stuff in it because you're only going to get probably half of what you ask for. So be sensible. Know that everyone's negotiating in the same manner, and you have to do your best to acquire what you need so that you can actually set yourself up for success. Define your protection. And when they say, well, I guess 50-50 will be fine, you have to be persistent now. This is where you need to be dogged, and you need to be a bit of a thorn in the side of, unfortunately, your superiors. Because you have to press them and say, well, what does 50-50 mean? Dr. Reed, what is my protection, right? Fortunately, Dr. Reed did not negotiate my employment with me. She's probably happy about that right now. So, but you know, what is clinical protection? The bottom line is clinical protection is people. It's your partners. It's your clinical partners who have to be able to understand what it is you're doing and find what you're doing worthy of protection. So this is not about you as a person, you know, that you want to be successful because you want to have a great looking CV. No, this is about your scientific research program. What will it contribute to your division? What will it contribute to your university? What will it contribute to your country, your province, your country? You have to be able to frame this as something that is not about you. It's altruistic. It's something that you're doing that's important for research, right? So you approach your partner in that manner and you say, listen, I have this research program I really want to build. Are you interested in brain tumors? And what you're going to find is that your clinical partners are going to say, oh my God, we've been wanting to study brain tumors for so long, we just don't have time. You know, and so you need to engage your partners in what it is you're studying. And my classic example of that is when I first met Naresh Murthy, who you guys all know is one of the most prolific surgeons ever. I don't know how many brain tumor cases he gets a year, but I get more brain tumors to my research program than any other center in Ontario. So clearly, you know, we have an excellent system here. We get 100 brain tumors a year from the combined hospitals here. So I approached Naresh Murthy and I said, Dr. Murthy, you do a lot of clinical neuro-oncology. I'm going to be doing basic neuro-oncology. He was thrilled. He said, Sheila, I love research. I don't have time to do it, but I love it. I love the idea of it. Anything I can do to help facilitate your research program. And so he really started by feeding my research program and by making sure that every single tumor patient of his, to this day, is captured for the brain tumor study. And now what we've done is that we actually have quarterly meetings where the residents and him come over from the Hamilton